All right.
So, you're listening with us here at the Weird Obscure World podcast.
Yes, please send us a like, a rate, review, subscribe. If you can, go on to iTunes and
Or
leave a review there.
Yeah, or give us a review anywhere that you catch your podcast.
Yeah, if they do offer a review system. And subscribe. We got lots of stuff. We plan on doing lots of stuff. We want to get better. If you have any stories for us to put up there. So far, the best way, the most consistent way to get a hold of us has been on Facebook, which is sad but true.
It is very effective.
Yeah.
So today's main story is going to be about vampires.
Thank you for joining us on the couch for this episode of the Weird Obscure World podcast.
I have been abducted.
Wait, what?
Their main forms they take are reptilian entities.
Yeah, the lore. Well, Betsy's bringing us the vampire story.
Yeah, so vampirism has existed for millennia, for as long as we have recorded history. Cultures even as far back as the Mesopotamians, the ancient Greeks, and Romans had tales of demons and spirits, which are considered to be like precursors to vampires. Despite the occurrence of vampire-like creatures in these civilizations, the folklore for the entity known today as vampire originates almost exclusively from southeastern Europe. So verbal traditions.
So we're talking kind of on the kind of southern Poland.
Yes.
Austria, Hungary.
Yep. So verbal traditions have been recorded and published after having been passed down for many, many generations. In most cases, vampires are revenants of evil beings, suicide victims, or witches. A revenant is an animated corpse.
Yeah, it's a corpse with unfinished business. It's unstoppable.
Right. It's believed to have been revived from death to haunt the living, and revenant is derived from an old French word, meaning the returning. That makes sense to me. Suicide victims, I was kind of surprised to hear had been tied to vampirism, and it's because suicide is an act of intentionally causing one's own death. And that, I would guess, long time ago, probably was seen as, perhaps an evil entity had taken over that person, and that's why they would do something like that. Versus today, where you...
Like a possession.
Right, where you understand that there's, contributing factors.
Yeah, like you work for the Clintons.
Yeah. Like you were suicided.
Yeah. Like you had too much dirt. That's wrong. I shouldn't claim that I know anything about that.
That's right. You shouldn't. Not without your tinfoil hat.
They're right next to me if I need to.
So they were also said to have been created by malevolent spirits possessing a corpse, or, and this came a little later, like an infection, being bitten by a vampire.
Yeah, and wasn't there that case in France where there was a mold that got into the bread in all one city and kind of made people act crazy and then die?
Right. They weren't sure what it was when the onset of the symptoms happened, but they did act completely nuts and likely would have probably been considered to be like totally possessed by evil spirits.
And that was just a bad batch of yeast, if I remember.
Yeah, there was some sort of mold spore that had found its way into the town's bakery and had hallucinogenic effects when eaten, and actually some people died.
Ooh. Now you've got those zombie wasps, right?
Yeah, that's more of a venom-inspired.
Yeah, and it causes the spider to kind of be under their control. Then they go into the spider's nest, and then they lay their eggs, and then the spider just lays there kind of
Yeah.
paralyzed until the baby wasps are born, and
Yeah.
then they eat. And then they've got that voodoo, what's that powder they blow in your face?
Yeah, they use it for hoodoo.
Yeah, what's that powder called?
I can't remember what
It's not
it's called.
psilocybin, that's a mushroom.
Scopolamine.
Scopolamine. Yeah.
Scopolamine. I don't know.
Yeah, that,
But they
scolding hot something meme, and that stuff.
is hallucinogenic.
Yeah, scopolamine. Dang it. Anyways, that stuff makes it so that, I don't know, I've heard some people say it's like a dream state, a lot of memory loss, a lot
Well,
of...
they were using it for burglary and to get them to do things.
Mhm.
Like
It's been
go to the
used-
ATM and
it's-
take all their money out.
It's
and-
been used in rapes.
Yeah.
It's been used, and I don't know if it makes you a zombie. I think I don't know. I think it probably acts more like an hallucinogenic that makes you susceptible to.
Coercion and
Yeah.
yeah. So it's
Anyway, sorry.
It's
off
okay.
track.
It's difficult to get a definitive description. If you look through the historical accounts of vampires, I think that our vision of vampires today is very different
Well, yeah. I mean,
than what they've made. They've romanticized the vampire, and if you go through,
sparkles in the sun.
and sparkly,
And not once did any of those guys count stuff.
nothing.
I know.
One.
That would have
Ha,
been
ha,
would
ha.
have been that would have made the show almost bearable.
Yes. But vampires of old were reported as bloated in appearance,
Mm.
like a ruddy purplish skin color,
Uh-huh.
and often seen seeping from the mouth and nose with blood. And this has
So
been
like
explained.
a rotting dead body.
Yes, and this has been explained that it kind of started the modern day vampirism, or the folklore around it, started because as corpses decompose, things happen, and it was a misunderstanding. Like the skin dries up, so it pulls back from the nails, so it appears as though the nails are growing,
And the hair.
and the hair, and they do take on a bloated appearance, and
Yeah.
their skin gets purplish red in color.
Gases are released out of orifices, so it might sound like they moan.
Right. And so this was explained back then as they were leaving their graves and feasting on blood because of the blood that would appear around their mouth and nose.
Or just any kind of biological material that was liquid coming out of that area.
Right. And that's how it was explained. But that isn't as far back as vampires go. Vampires, for instance, the Mandurago is from the Philippines. And it's if you have a relationship go bad. They're a group of beautiful young women with wings called Kenari. And these Kenari, so if you're foolish enough to, break someone's heart, these Kenari come at night and suck your blood, draining your body completely of blood.
If you break a girl's heart, you
Yep.
get... Okay.
Yep, and they have these sharp, barbed, hollow tongues that pierce the neck of the man.
So they're
And-
like skeeter tongues.
Yeah, like straws.
Oh.
And then there's the Impundulu, which is from Africa or South Africa. It's got an insatiable thirst for blood. And witches who build allies with an impundulu can either send it to kill others or let it kill her to feed its hunger. So if you make
So
it as
she
a
might sacrifice herself.
well, if she, it's kind of like a deal with the devil. You've got to make a choice. If you run out of people to send it to kill,
It still has to eat.
it still has to eat.
Does it kill her when it feeds, or does
Yes.
it just lightly,
So it was often passed by witches to their daughters in old age. So it was something that followed them. As soon as it became an ally, it followed them throughout their life, and then they passed it on to their daughters because they
That's
found
a-
it to be an easy choice.
That's a hell of a present.
Yeah. So that goes even further back than vampires. Then there's the Yaramayahu, which is from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a strange vampire that prefers to hunt during the daytime. So the Yaramayahu,
But
It-
that's daytime in Australia, so it's night here.
yeah,
So it makes sense.
yeah.
They're upside down anyway.
So it lurks in trees, and it'll wait for a person to stray beneath them and drops down on them using the suckers on its hands because it doesn't have any teeth, and it drinks all the blood from the person in one sitting.
Through their hands?
Yes. Yes.
Does it have a face?
They look much like kind of like a frog.
Oh.
They're a frog-like creature.
Oh, frog fire.
Yeah. Then there's Kappas. Kappa's a Japanese monster. Not only will it attempt to suck all the blood from a person, but it will also take your soul via your anus.
Through your anus.
Through your anus. It's a water-dwelling... it's a water... Just gonna brush right over that.
So-
Takes your soul through your anus.
So the soul is located.
In the anus. The Kappa is a water-dwelling creature and resembles like a creepy turtle.
Okay.
It's got long limbs
Uh-huh.
and a shell on its back.
Uh-huh.
And it actually... the head looks kind of monkey-like if you look at the picture
So it
of
has
it.
kind of like a monkey turtle face?
Yeah, it's puppy baby monkey. Oh, that's where it came
Turtle.
from. Puppy baby turtle monkey. Find your soul in your anus. The Kappa, to defeat the Kappa, apparently it's defeatable. And to defeat the Kappa, you must bow to it. If you bow to it,
Well, that puts your anus on the other side. It can't get to the soul.
that's gotta be it.
I mean, it'd have to eat through a whole bunch of head and chest cavity and everything to get to your soul.
To get to your soul.
It can't get there.
I can't even handle it. Then
No,
there's
if there's two kappas, the other one's sneaking up behind. Right?
for crying out loud. Then there's the Jiangshi. It's a vampiric creature of Chinese mythology,
Uh-huh.
and they're known as hopping vampires. So Jiangshi start their second life as normal human corpses. If they've been killed by some violent means or have committed suicide, the soul may not be able to leave the body and therefore reanimates it as a Jiangshi.
So they're normal people,
Normal people,
and then they die, and then they become a
It-
Jiangshi,
right, only if it's by violent means or suicide.
and they hop.
Yeah, so hopping meaning it's okay, so cats leaping over a dead body may also cause it to come back, it says.
Okay.
So if your cat jumps over your dead body, Jiangshi. Still better than the Kappa.
The asshole eater.
Yes, the asshole find your soul. Ass soul. So then there's the Asobasam and Sasobansam, which are of Togo and Ghana. And it waits in the branches, held in place by its curved legs. So the legs are bent the opposite direction, kind of like
Kinda
the
like-
alien
Yeah.
in Alien, how they're
So it hooks its legs onto a branch and hangs upside down like
Yes.
a bat or a sloth.
they're a human-like creature minus that attribute.
Mm-hmm.
And they hide in trees to catch the unwary below. Now, the Sasobansam has bat wings to boot.
Oh. So it's like the next generation.
Yes, and the only way to feed its hunger is to suck the blood of humans. So each one of these, in all different countries, in all different folklore and mythology and verbal traditions, have to feed on the life force that is blood.
Mm.
So there's the Asima. Never trust the elderly seems to be the lesson the Asima tries to teach us.
What?
Yeah. By day, the Asima takes on the form of a decidedly non-threatening old person. By night, the Asima sheds its wrinkly skin, transforms into a bloodsucker.
Do you think maybe they do that so you respect the elderly?
Maybe just so they just fly
so
under
you're
the
nice
radar.
to them so that that these folklores come out so you respect the elderly so they don't get revenge on you at night.
Perhaps. So once it actually finds people at night that are sleeping, and once it locates a sleeping victim, it siphons off their blood. They may either completely drain their prey, if the blood is especially tasty, or just enough to leave the victim weak. Now, you can repel them, obviously, by using garlic.
Well, of course.
Yes. And that what that does is it turns your blood bitter so that they aren't tempted to finish you off.
So they don't like it as much.
Yep.
They
Now this one,
they sit and grumble to the waiter and
the Asima is also apparently unable to resist counting objects.
oh, please, yes. There he is.
There he is. So by
I've heard
scattering
about this one.
seeds mixed with the talons of owls around your house, you can distract the Asima by forcing it to count the seeds.
As they come up, they 1, ha, 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 2.
And here's the thing, is if they mistake an owl claw for a seed, then they'll have to start counting all over again, giving you a safe night's sleep.
So you want to have a scatter of different types of things.
Yes, because they can only count seeds, or they only like to count seeds.
Or maybe they only like to count one thing.
Yeah. So that was the only one I saw that was like 1, ha, ha, ha. I still
Oh
haven't
my
seen any
gosh.
blah, 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 but we're working on it.
All right.
So the Sequoivant is from the Caribbean. It's similar to the Asima.
Yeah.
It's an old woman
Uh-oh.
that turns into a demon that sneaks into your houses. And
Where was the Yasima from?
the Asima is from Suriname, one of
Okay.
the islands. And then the Caribbean has the Sequoivant. And again, they call it a her. Thirst is only satisfied by creeping into people's rooms at night and dropping her skin, which is gross all in itself, blood sucking, and then away she goes.
Does she put the skin back on, or do you wake up to
Ew.
a fleshy wetsuit?
Gross. Oh. The Strigoi is from Romania. The Strigoi have some claim to being the original vampires from Dracula and all other Western traditions to be descended from. The Strigoi are those who die before their time. Unable to go on to the afterlife, they rise from their graves. Other causes, again, of becoming a Strigoi include having a cat jump over your dead body.
That's a common theme,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah. And here's some other causes or reasons or ways to become a Strigoi. Having been born with hair, obviously a vampire, or being the seventh child.
The seventh?
Seventh child, Strigoi. Why would you have 7 children if traditionally it says your 7th child's going to be a vampire?
Maybe that was their population control.
Yeah. It was ancient birth control. So in the first 40 days after death, the Strigoi may leave their grave in search of blood. They may reappear in spectral human form exactly as they were when they were alive and rejoin their family only to attack them and suck their blood.
So in spectral form, like kind of see-through.
Kind of, yeah, translucent, more like a holographic form.
Oh.
So they physically present themselves as walking corpses that attack the living. Now, in 2003, not that long ago, a Romanian man named Petra Toma died. His niece became ill after dreaming that her uncle was visiting her each night. This being a classic sign of the Strigoi attack, Petra's brother knew he had to act. In 2003, with 5 other men, he dug up his brother's body and removed the heart. This they burned, capturing the ash which it gave off, and then they fed this sick niece the ash. Cured. She was cured.
And she got better.
She got better.
Well,
2003.
now, would you burn that heart and collect the ash with a hickory blend, maybe some mesquite?
I don't think they smoked it for flavor. They did a little an overnight
Yeah, you know.
seasoning of it.
Yeah, and then you've got to eat ash, eat a plate of ash. Just
Then we've got the Penanggalan. It's a vampire from Southeast Asia that is unlike any other. It can often be found as a beautiful young woman by day. At night, her head floats away from her body, trailing intestines and other bits of guts.
that's like that whatchamacallit.
You can spot her anywhere. Now mobile, this hungry head goes off in search of its prey.
Does it fly with wings for
Well,
ears?
it floats, it says.
Oh.
Pregnant women and newborn babies are its preferred victims.
Mm.
Yeah. So this head, the Penanggalan, lands on the roof of a house where a child is about to be born. With a long, invisible tongue, it laps up the blood shed by women in childbirth. Ugh. When the child is born, the Penanggalan shrieks. Those whose blood the vampire takes suffer from a wasting sickness and are almost certain to die.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, to protect an expectant mother...
Let's say you go on a hot date. Beautiful young lady. You take her out to Thai house, all that stuff. And then you're bedding down at night and a rustle wakes you up.
Her head's floating
And you
through
look
the room.
over and this head floats up with
Entrails
entrails dangling underneath
behind.
it. Looks like Cthulhu. Oh.
So to protect the expectant mother
How
from
many
this...
showers does it take?
Oh, I don't even know. Here's what... So the Penanggalan, okay, where do these come from? Who's the Stephen King creator of the Penanggalan?
There's not, it's kind of passive scary, but there's not anything more scary than things like this.
Well, and here's it returns to its home, so it returns to its beautiful young woman's body, full of blood, and has to soak its swollen guts in vinegar to shrink them enough to fit back into its body.
So it's a whole process, a whole thing.
Yeah. And if you want to protect yourself from it, you have to leave thorny leaves scattered around the floor or broken glass.
Oh, pleasant.
So that it sucks up that with the blood and cuts
It
itself.
sounds a lot easier just to spill seeds.
Let them count. Let them
Yep.
count. So vampires are much more prolific and from all walks of life, all places of the earth have these mythical, folkloric creatures that live on blood.
Yeah, there's a lot of blood sucking in all
Yes.
in all cultures, it seems like.
So it is thought to be that because it wasn't understood all of the working mechanisms of the body, that they just literally blamed life on blood. Having found that when people were drained of blood, they died. It became something that was focused on
Well, it's not just
throughout
that,
history.
but that is a visual measure that you can see when someone's hurt.
Yes. So another interesting I found was how to identify vampires. Because you would think it would just be sharp teeth, drink blood, done.
Well, there's tongues that are straws.
Yeah, but this...
Is it a swirly straw? Does it have a white with a red stripe?
I don't know. But there are rituals that are used to identify a vampire. One method to finding a vampire's grave involves leading a virgin boy through a graveyard on a virgin stallion. Now, the horse would supposedly balk at the grave in question. Generally, a black horse is required to get a really clear reading.
Okay.
Although in Albania, it has to be white.
But in Albania, it has to be white.
Yeah.
It has to be a virgin. Has to have a virgin boy on it.
Yes.
Okay.
So you could also open up, as they did many times, the grave, and generally, if the corpse had a healthier appearance than expected, then they were suspected, if they weren't just bones, they were suspected that they had been feeding on something, and that's what's sustaining their life.
Or if, maybe the casket was just a little bit better sealed, or
Yeah.
the dirt was a little bit better for keeping the elements out. We don't want to think about any of that.
So, destruction, because obviously you want to be able to destroy these. There's the ways that we, see in movies today. But in Russia and the Baltic states, they would burn them.
Yeah.
Not a stake through the heart, not a,
They're just cremation.
they would just cremate them. So if you were suspected of being a vampire, once you passed, in some places they would actually take the wooden stakes and stake you into your coffin.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a method of killing you. You were already dead. It was a method of keeping you in there so you couldn't rise and go feed on other people at night.
Nailing you down.
Yes, nailing you into your state of rest. Russia and Baltic states didn't even...
They didn't bother with
They
that.
didn't bother with it. They just
But
burned
it's
you.
cold in Russia.
It's...
Maybe they just wanted the
They were
warmth.
just cold.
Just any excuse to start a fire to stay warm.
Yeah. So decapitation is also another preferred method. The head would be decapitated and then buried between the feet, behind the buttocks, or away from the body.
Oh.
And this was done as a way of keeping the departure of the soul, which in some cultures was said to linger in the corpse.
Uh-huh.
So some cultures believe that at the time of death, your soul rises and moves on. Other cultures believe that it remains in the corpse.
Uh-huh.
And so by decapitation, it would hasten that. It would hurry along the departure of the soul so you couldn't reanimate.
And then they put the head down by the anus,
Yeah, put it right
where
down.
the soul really is.
Yes.
So what they did was cork the exit.
They corked the exit. So
Guaranteed to trap the soul there forever.
the Romani people drove steel or iron needles into the corpse's heart and placed bits of steel in the mouth, over the ears, covering the eyes, and between the fingers. I don't understand that, but that was just what they did. Now, in Venice, a brick was forced into the mouth of a female corpse that had been interpreted as a vampire.
A brick?
Brick. And I don't know if it's just to keep her held down because she was too frail to lift her head with a
That, and
brick.
she would be able to bite with the brick, and
Yeah, perhaps. And then, of course, you have, the sprinkling of holy water, exorcism. Those are all kind of from the Balkans.
can you just buy holy water from the church?
Yes.
You can?
Yeah. I
Like-
think, what's his name? The televangelist that was on TV was selling holy water.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think we our plan to go into the sanctuary.
We
I
should-
want to see if I can buy some.
We should take some, yes.
Buy a Gatorade bottle with some, or a spray bottle. Oh, a
What are
squirt
those?
gun.
Water cannon.
Yeah.
So, there's many ways to kill them. But I was interested to find out, because the vampires we have today, they're just panty waist vampires.
Don't say that yet. We're gonna go meet them. No, they're very respectable, and
I mean, they have
Scary.
like jobs and places to live. Real vampires were nomads. They were wandering, bloodthirsty gypsies.
or floating heads.
Or
with
floating heads with,
entrails.
yeah. Where's your commitment to your craft?
Or ass-eating turtles.
Ass-eating turtles. Can't we get a decent vampire anymore? So we're going to talk about 10 famous vampires to close up this ancient and mythological vampire show. The next one, we're going to talk about the modern day vampire, the resurgence of vampirism.
He was made handsome. You had that show that
Yeah,
was
they
made
were
in
ugly
the
as
20s.
a mud fence before.
What was his name? Was it Nosferatu?
Maybe.
You had that one, and he just had the two buck teeth, looked like a beaver with
Yeah.
pointy ears.
Okay, so we're going to talk top 10 famous vampires. So the Highgate vampire, around the time Neil Armstrong first walked on the moon, that's not that long ago.
No, it's what, 60?
Right. You would think this would
Was
be
it-
like hundreds of years ago, but it's not.
Was it 68, 69?
I think it was 68.
Okay.
So, a vampire about that time was appearing in Highgate Cemetery in London. The first sign of the predator was the appearance of scattered dead animals left all over the grounds. These innocent creatures had wounds on their necks and were completely drained of blood. Now, witnesses described a tall, dark figure wandering the cemetery, omitting a hypnotic gaze. Like, how you doing? And eventually, vampire hunters raided the graveyard and dug up several graves, protecting the integrity of the site.
They say that so easy, like digging up a grave's just a nothing. That's 8 hours of work.
Dig it up. Piece of cake.
Oh, and they had shitty shovels back then.
So, authorities began closing the cemetery at night, and over time, there were fewer and fewer reports of this vampire.
Okay.
Now, back in the 1800s, there was the vampire of Groglin Grange. The Cronwell family moved into Groglin Grange in Cumbria. Almost immediately, the lady of the house began noticing strange lights outside and just below her bedroom. One night, she woke up to the lights glaring at her. She realized that these were not wandering lights, but they were the eyes of a vampire.
Ooh.
The creature of the night broke through her window and wounded her on her neck, causing her to bleed profusely. As she screamed for help, her brothers ran to her just in time to see a figure leap from the room. They pulled out their pistols and shot at it. They tracked the vampire to a local graveyard, finding an open crypt. Inside the crypt, they found the rotting corpse amongst gnawed bones and bearing a fresh bullet wound. Yeah.
So someone shot the rotting corpse
Yeah.
as it was wandering around looking for blood, obviously.
Yeah. So they set it on fire, destroying it. There's the vampire of New England, Now, sightings of vampire in the United States, you very seldom see. There is record of a few early cases in New England, however. The most famous of the tales is the story of Mercy Brown. Mercy died from tuberculosis, which is common ailment in the 1700s. Afterwards, her family began to take ill, each dying one right after the other. The locals dug up Mercy's body to find it in pristine condition.
How long had she been dead?
It doesn't say, but it says that given the considerable amount of time that it had been in the ground, they knew it was the works of being a vampire, so they burned it.
Oh, so she was still in good shape.
Yeah, they said she was pristine,
Still
like
fresh.
the day they buried her.
Mm.
So then there's Fitzharmon, the butcher. So this is in the 1920s. The butcher of Hanover, also known as the Vampire of Hanover, committed unspeakable crimes of murder and rape of over 50 young men. Fritz Harmon is the real name, the butcher's real name, was charged as a serial killer when a stash of human bones and more than 500 decaying body parts were discovered next to a nearby river. Since he was a convicted pedophile, he was immediately questioned and his home searched. Authorities, during this home search, found bloodstains and several items that belonged to the murdered boys. He was found guilty of the crimes and in 1925 was beheaded. Now, it was rumored that he had a black market butcher business and that the blood and the meat of his victims were sold at this black market butcher.
Ooh, so he's getting it coming and going.
Yeah. So Clara Gesserlin.
What would you do if you had been going to a butcher, you
Oh,
know,
hell almighty.
getting burger,
It's the stuff of
getting
nightmares.
burger, steaks, maybe a couple roasts, then you find out that it's suspected he was selling you people.
Oh. No. No. Gross.
That'd be creepy.
And thankfully, that came, or maybe not thankfully, as it would be, that came out following his beheading. So, one of the famous vampires is Peter Plogojewicz.
Okay, one more time.
Plogojewicz.
Okay.
Now, his death was unremarkable, except for the fact that he didn't stay dead. 9 people, who all experienced hauntings by Peter in their dreams, died within 10 weeks of his death. Yeah. Peter's own son reported seeing him before dying mysteriously.
So we don't know how these people died. It doesn't,
Yeah.
all different ways, but they all died, huh?
They all saw him in their dreams and then died. Authorities later exhumed his body to find him allegedly breathing and his eyes moving.
What?
So, they thrust a stake into his heart. Problem solved. Now, you've got Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood
Yeah.
Countess. So she was a
She wasn't a blood drinker.
No, but she found pleasure in tormenting peasants. She would beat them, pierce their bodies with nails, and even douse them in water and let them freeze in the snow.
And she would drain their blood and bathe in it.
And she was accused of being a vampire when it was found she bathed in the blood of young maidens.
There's something like 600 they think that she killed.
Yeah.
That's prolific murders. That's
huge.
on level of serial killer. She takes the cake
Yeah. Top of the line.
of personally killing or being a part of the deaths of 600 people. As a serial killer, she takes a cake.
And
I mean, yeah, you can argue these leaders that kill more, have more, but she
they
was
didn't personally
there.
do it. She personally.
Yeah.
And then it was rumored that the bloodbath was a ritual that was her attempt at achieving immortality.
Yeah, keeping her young.
So that would be very much along the lines of vampirism.
Yeah, she and then you know what her punishment was?
No.
House arrest.
I had heard that, I think.
That's it.
Oh, for crying out loud.
So we won't let you go play out with the maidens anymore.
Well,
But oh, yeah.
so then you've got Vlad.
Oh, Vlad.
Vlad the Tyrant.
Vlad the Impaler.
Vlad, also known as Vlad the Impaler. He's a descendant of the Dracul family.
Well, it was an order of the Dracul. It was a holy order fighting the incursion of Islam into the Hungarian lands and Turkish lands.
And he was often referred to as Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
So he earned his reputation through his practice of torturing his enemies and then killing them by impalement. He murdered upwards of 100,000 people in the mid-1400s with acts of terror. Now later, Bram Stoker, who really thrust vampirism into the daylight with his books, associated name Dracula with his fictional vampire character.
Yeah, now the story of Vlad is he was sent to I think the Ottoman Empire as like a tribute and a page, kind of a imperial hostage. And while he was gone, some of the merchants and his brother betrayed his father, who was the king of Hungary. Well, the king. And so he left, went there, and that's when he started his reign of terror, started bringing in merchants one at a time, questioning them, murdering them, hanging them on posts. And the main reason he got the bad name was he would force people to eat banquets with these staked up people, including his brother and his uncle and these merchants, on stake, slowly dying as they would run a stake up through the Soul Center. And they'd only run it far enough to where you were starting to die, and then they would raise the stake and you would slowly lower down. And some people, to enhance the story, would claim that he would dip his bread in their blood, but that's unfounded. But yeah, he was on a reign of terror, and he did that to re-secure the kingdom. And he did. He secured the kingdom through it.
Vlad. Terrible guy.
Yes.
Terrible guy, and because they called him Dracula, and then Bram Stoker did his book, and then named the person Dracula,
Yeah.
He was a bad guy, but not necessarily a vampire.
Claimed he made a deal with the devil
Yeah.
to gain his strength. Have you heard of Richard Chase,
Yes.
the vampire of Sacramento?
Yes, I didn't want to cover him in this, even though
He
he's
kind of
pretty
deserves a
famous.
story all himself.
Well, he was a total creep.
Well, it's psychosis. He had psychosis. At one time, he thought aliens had removed part of his brain. But his psychosis drove him to drink blood and cannibalize. And we will do a show on him. That'll be an
Jared will
upcoming
do a show on him. Because I don't want to research that kind of evil.
The thing about
boxes.
me, he's one of the most interesting serial killers in my mind.
Sure.
One of the most interesting, and one of the most vile. Easily one of the most vile.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the last one that's listed on this is Carmilla, the vampire countess. So
Carmilla, isn't that Prince Charles' wife? Okay. She's Camilla.
Camilla. This is Carmilla.
I was going to say, we're going right now, huh? Bring it.
So Carmilla is described as a good-looking and dangerous woman.
Mm-hmm.
It's
not her.
Yeah. It's a young woman who's swayed by
not her.
who's seduced by power,
Might be
and her story is that it was discovered that she was a vampire. She was beheaded, and in the end, her crypt was reopened by villagers, and it was found that her head had been reattached, and she was in perfect condition.
Oh, buddy.
So, I think that vampire folklore started with a fear of the unknown. And our brains are designed to follow a story. There has to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if you poke someone and their blood comes out and they die, you go, okay, That's what it is. They died from being poked. The blood exited, so then you create a story that supports things that could take that life force, that it supports that fear. And I think vampirism started from that. Now, it's cult-like in its measures now. As we'll cover in our next show, there are websites,
In
there
2
are
weeks from now, show.
there are groups you can join.
Yeah, people idolize them and want to be one.
Yes, and identify. And I don't know if they truly identify or just to be a part of a group to belong identify. But there are people that identify as vampires and live their lives much like a vampire. And not in the traditional sense as like their head pops off and floats around with their entrails dangling, but they have their canine teeth altered to be shaped
Longer and
yes, pointier. They a lot of them actually drink blood.
I mean, I like a rare steak. But then again, I like a cured rare steak.
Yes.
You know, like when you cook a steak and it looks like there's still blood. That's not actually blood. We're not going to go into what it is, but it's not actually blood. But it's cured means you've hung it and it's drained.
It's
and
drained.
dried.
Yes. So,
like my deer, I cure my deer for no less than 4 days. I try to reach around 7 or 8 days if I can.
if the weather permits, yeah.
Just makes a better tasting animal.
Yeah. So there is an entire cult following. In the next show that I do about vampires, I'm going to cover that. We're going to try and get a couple of interviews with vampires. I'm going to try to better understand when they identify, how do they behave. I mean, there are people sleeping in coffins. There are people staying out of sunlight. There are people drinking blood. I know that one modern-day vampire I reached out to is a sanguinarian vampire, which I have subsequently learned is she was not... A cat didn't jump over her dead body. She was not reanimated after death. She did not commit suicide and then come back, or any of the traditional senses, but she was bitten by a vampire. And that's not in any mythology. Never in mythology, the oldest folklore, did they say that it was an infection that could be given. That's brand new.
Yeah.
So, she claims to be a sanguinarian. I would like to know who infected her, and was it consensual infection?
Yeah, did she seek it out?
Because if you see these, like the shows, the sparkly vampire,
Twilight, she wanted to be infected.
She wanted to be infected.
Didn't she have to be infected because she was pregnant, though?
I don't know.
I saw the first one.
I didn't follow the series.
I got in trouble with our sister.
The movie.
Yeah.
Listen, it's her own fault for taking you.
Yeah, what did she think was going to happen? I'm not a reverent person.
So, but I want to know if Ian Sparkles. I want to know if
Ian Sparkles. That sounds like a modern day pop boy band.
Yes, I want to know if modern day vampires. Like, I want to know how committed they are to this narrative.
Well, I'd like to know not how committed they are, but how do they relate with the historical mythology built up around it, or do they have their own that's built? Because it might totally be separate, even from the Dracula narrative.
Yes,
it might be a whole new build. Like Twilight was a total separation from the Dracula narrative.
Absolutely.
So they might be built up through that. They might be built up. Who knows where they're from? It's going to be an interesting conversation. I hope they like coffee, because I think we should start somewhere well lit, like a coffee shop. I may not be a little guy, but I don't want to test my strength overpowering a vampire.
That's right. So yeah, vampires.
Yeah, we're gonna try to
We'll finish this up.
start a dialogue with a couple of them. I'd like to try to start a dialogue with one of each, one of the ones that think that
Mm-hmm.
that is under the impression, or I don't want to. One of the ones that claims to be born vampire, and then one of the ones that claims to be made vampire.
Now, from what I understand, it's never a genetic predisposition, which again, Twilight was a total breakaway from that.
Yeah,
it's,
I want to.
it's not passed on to their.
Except for that one where the daughter gets it from the witch.
Well, the daughter had to be an ally with the vampire.
Yeah,
when
because
her
mom
died.
was a.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we'll have to.
Like a pet.
We'll do a familiar.
Yeah.
We'll do some contacting. Next week, got a show coming up. I'm not gonna lay out what it's about yet, but look for us on midweek. Remember, come to our Facebook. Let us know what you think and add to it. Feel free if you see any weird stories. We love aliens, Bigfoots, ghosts, and now I guess vampires
Whatever.
and serial killers and crazy people. And I know we've been on this kick of MK Ultra
Conspiracy
type stuff. We're going to break away from that for a bit because I'm still too greasy from the last two shows.
Right.
And I need to find better soap or something. We got to shake that off, but we still do need to finish that. There's lots of stuff to complete that out. Project Pegasus and the Montauk Project and things like that. But I want to break away from that for probably another month.
Yeah.
Just give me some time away from it. I want to do something fun where I can enjoy it and sleep that night.
Yeah. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Remember, come to our Facebook, like, share, rate, review, subscribe. If you can do us a favor and hop on iTunes and just throw a rating on there, that'd be
Super
much
helpful.
appreciated.
Yes.
And it's free.
Yeah.
It's free to do that. All right. Thank you.
Have a great week.
Yes.